Alright. Next. The other show from the spring season, Aria the Avvenire. Did not touch on Aria at all until very recently, specifically because of this rewind series that I'm doing. I just binged the first 3 seasons over the course of about like a few weeks in order to watch this. Really like what I saw of that. It's probably Junichi Sato's best work. So hey, it's Junichi Sato again. So let's see. And this OVA comes a long time after Origination. I think it's like 8 years. So let's see if it was, and I think this is also anime original stuff as well. Like this is post manga content. So let's see if it was worth bringing back. Alright, that was definitely a sequel. I just finished up Aria the Avvenire, which is a 3-episode OVA that came out 8 years after Aria the Origination. I don't want to say that it was unnecessary, because saying that would be antithetical to the whole thesis of Aria, of just enjoying the little moments and just the nice little steps along the pathway of life. But there definitely could have been more put into this. Well, what I will say is the whatever production circumstances they had were not good enough for an Aria anime, because there's a lot, like, the big hang up here is that it is 8 years since the previous entry, and so no matter how you were going to animate it, it was going to look different than Aria looked before. And like, as the seasons have gone on, there have been like minute, gradual changes to the overall art style of the series, especially like Aria the Origination looks somewhat different from Aria the Natural. Mostly because it's in 16:9 instead of 4:3, but there are also some other differences as well. But from Origination to Avvenire is a massive jump in aesthetic changes. The colors are much more saturated. Well, let's just talk about the big bugbear in the room is there's a lot more CG assets in this than in previous seasons. There was a few in Origination and the Arietta OVA. A few. But Avvenire uses them frequently. Like, a lot of the gondolas are CG. A lot of the backgrounds are CG. It's noticeable. Because with a show like Aria, the aesthetic and the art design and the mood set by all of those things is kind of the whole point. You're not watching Aria because it has a compelling story. You're not watching Aria because it's got phenomenal gag comedy. You're watching Aria because it looks really fucking good, and the way it looks makes it really good at setting the mood for these very small stories about life that these characters go through. And if you don't have that, it really doesn't have the same impact. I'm not saying it's bad, but it's just not Aria as it was. If you started with the aesthetic of Avvenire, I probably would not have continued this series with its episode count the way it is. Because, like, and on the, like, and I'm not saying it's all bad. Like, there are a lot of really good background shots. The cityscapes, a lot of the time, still look really good. There are a lot of shots where they really went all out on stuff. Like, I think in the last episode, there's like a nighttime shot of some kind of cathedral or something, and the lighting on that looked really fucking good. But it's not anywhere near as consistent as the TV series from 8 years ago. Like, think about that. This is an OVA that's only 3 episodes, and it doesn't look good as a 13 or 26 episode TV series from almost a decade earlier. It's not as consistent. And also, some of the aesthetic changes I just straight up don't think are good. Because, like, yes, the colors are a little more saturated, so you get a lot more pop to some of the character designs. But also that means it takes away a little bit of the warmth to the more warm and slightly muted color design of the previous seasons. And so there's a trade-off there that I'm not sure was necessarily a good idea. Also, there's some compositing issues now, which really wasn't a huge thing with Aria back then. Like, character on top of background was not really a problem with the original series. And it kind of is here, especially with how saturated the color design is for the character designs. And, like, when they're up close and they can get in as much detail as they want, the character designs look pretty solid. But the medium and wide shots compared to previous seasons of Aria, not even close. It's not even close. Like, the CG gondolas in particular really stick out to me. Like, the texture on the seats in the gondola really sticks out for some reason. And it's just, anything that distracts you in a show like this is a major detriment. Does that make sense? Like, if the entire point is to be immersed in this is an Iyashikei series. Full stop. And if the entire point of the show is to be healing and relaxing and to immerse you in this world, anything that stops that immersion is a big hang-up. So that's really disappointing. Not totally unexpected, because, like, why would you make... Well, I know why these are made. Well, why, but the circumstances in which these are made was that each of these 3 episodes came as, like, a Blu-ray extra for Blu-ray box sets of each season of the TV series. So, like, Aria the Animation got the first episode, Aria the Natural got the second episode, and Aria the Origination got the third episode, which you can actually see some details of. Like, if you watch the credits in the second episode, it's a bunch of shots that call back to different episodes from Aria the Natural. So, cool detail there. But that's the circumstances in which these were released. And also, this came out just before Amanchu, which is basically Junichi Sato's Aria of 2016 and 2017. I think it was 2017. And I believe that was actually my first Junichi Sato work, if you don't count me watching Sailor Moon when I grew up. And as far as I can remember, that show looked fucking gorgeous. So, I don't know if these are the same studio. I don't think they're the same studio, but it is the same director. So, his attention was definitely being split at this time. And I think one definitely had priority over the other. But enough complaints about the production. What about the content? Because the content of Aria is just as important as the package. And it's good. I really don't have a lot of complaints about the content other than... Well, one big complaint I have is he's not really interested in exploring these new characters at all. Like, the new singles that are being trained under Akari and Aika and Alice, they're not very interesting. They're fine. Like, I is fine. And I've already forgotten the other one. One of them's named Anya, I think. And I forgot what the other one is. And it is kind of funny that they're making an obvious attempt to bring in more cultures to this city. Because, like, the Himea single is very obviously Irish. And the one from Orange Planet is very obviously Russian. So that was a fun little detail, I guess. Just to bring in some more diversity of character designs and such. But I really don't have anything to say about any of their personalities. They're just bubbly little singles. And a lot of the content is flashbacks. To the point where I actually didn't even notice that the first one was a flashback. I missed like one line right at the start of it. And so I didn't even notice that the whole thing with Alicia's half birthday and stuff was a whole flashback sequence. So that caused a good deal of confusion for me. But yeah, this one is it's still about the characters that you like, to the point where I'm wondering if these were like manga content that got cut from the original anime broadcast. Like if these were stories that just didn't make it in. Well, some of them obviously weren't, because there's a lot of present day stuff. But I'm not gonna speculate on that. I'm just gonna assume this is all anime original content. And it's good. It's nowhere near as impactful as anything from this TV series. Again, perhaps because of the visuals, but I think they're solid little stories. The appreciations of the little moments in life continue. The theme this time around, I guess, is miracles and the happy little coincidences that make life worth really brighten up your life, and also how you can sort of create your own miracles, and how you can put in the effort to bring about those happy little coincidences. Yeah, it was fine. Disappointing to say the least, but I don't think it's outright bad. I'll probably still watch the two movies that come after this. What is it, Crepuloso and or Crepuscolo or something, and then I don't know the other, Ben something for this other one. But I'll check those out at some point. Probably not right now. Maybe putting some distance between the original series and these things might be a little better. But yeah, this is fine. Alright, Aria the Avvenire is complete. And let's see, where am I going to put you? Yeah, we're going to put you right above Koyomi Monogatari. in the number 37 spot with a light 7. Definitely could have been better, but it is still Aria. Alright. Spring season is done. We're really trugging along now. A Silent Voice is next for the first one from the summer season. This was by far the biggest one that I missed from 2016. Just because I didn't have time to see it in theaters for some reason. I think I was working that all the times that it was showing. And so I just never got around to seeing it. I bought the Blu-ray ages ago, and I just never got around to seeing it because it is a 2+ hour movie. With a lot of heavy drama. I did read a decent chunk of the manga, and this is KyoAni, so we ball. Alright, now that's what we're fucking talking about. Naoko Yamada does not miss. Okay, just finished up A Silent Voice, which is a show that's been on my plan to watch for over a decade now, I think. Sometime in 2016 or 2015, I put it on there probably. And then it came out, and I think I mentioned this in the intro, I just didn't have time to go out and see it in theaters. And it's just sat there forever, and it's kind of amazing that it sat there forever, considering its prestige and its KyoAni and Naoko Yamada, two creators and creative groups that I absolutely love. And this film's a good showcase of it. This is a hell of a film. This by far one of the most beautiful things that KyoAni has ever made, but not in like very obvious ways. It's not like there's not like fantastic scenery or like hyper abstract imagery that's just like flashing constantly. A lot of the art design and animation is very down to earth and grounded, but it's still got a little bit of that abstraction in it as well. This is a little bit earlier on in not earlier on in Yamada's career, but compared to now it certainly is, I guess. This is well before what was it? Kimi no Iro. I forget what the English translation for that was. Yeah, this was a... Sorry, this one, I feel like I'm going to have... A lot of my feelings about this one are very abstract when it comes to like the presentation, because it's just sort of... A lot of it is just KyoAni being KyoAni. The extreme attention to detail in the character acting and the details of the facial features and the facial expressions, and just the absolutely delightful color design. It's surprisingly light, but also in terms of like the general shading of everything, or the hues of everything, I guess, which matches the overall direction of the film pretty well. But it's still definitely got its big, heavy moments as well. And a little bit of abstract imagery again to help it along the way, I guess. Sorry, I don't know why I'm having so much trouble talking about this one in particular. Maybe it's because so much has been said about it already. Maybe it's because a lot of it is just very straight. A lot of it is surprisingly straightforward, but a lot of it isn't. I think a lot of it is just sort of a lot of the pull of this film is just a combination of the general messiness of children being able to be shockingly cruel to each other, and also teenagers being fucking teenagers. All of that, And that combined with sort of a, like, what kind of narrative would you call that? Like a redemption narrative of sorts, a self-redemption narrative of Ishida really just trying his best to be like, get back to a, not necessarily even try to get back to a place of where he was before, but just sort of like trying to heal the things that he broke in the past. It's a very compelling narrative, and I really like the sort of nuance of it in the, what am I trying to say? Why I'm just having a big old brain fart on this. Maybe that's how it's supposed to be sometimes. Maybe you're just supposed to sit and watch a movie sometimes and not try to explain it. But that's what I'm gonna fucking do anyway. Because that's... Anyway, I'm getting incredibly sidetracked. This movie is just really damn good at portraying the intricacies, I guess, of school children in school social systems, specifically in the way that bullying comes about. Like, it felt extremely natural for the bullying to happen. Like, I like that it starts with like everyone being very nice to Nishimiya and just being totally understanding of it. And then eventually it's like that one little switch flips of Ueno being like, it's kind of annoying that we have to write on this all the time. Or I think it actually started with the sign language thing. It's like, all right, we're going to teach you guys sign language. Do we have to, though? Like, the bullying doesn't stem from, like, pure malice. It stems from laziness in a very weird way. And then the laziness snowballs into annoyance, which snowballs into bullying. And, Ishida being a dumb kid who just really doesn't get it, sees that and just kind of rolls with it. And sort of like, he sort of sees, it's never like stated in the film, but my interpretation of it is like he sees all this and he goes, oh, this is acceptable. We're going to bully her. And also, like, that combined with just his inability to recognize Nishimiya's just kindness and also self-hatred in a way of just constantly blaming herself for not being able to fit in with everyone instead of it being the fact that she's being bullied, and that just sort of sends him off, eventually resulting in Nishida just leaving the school for being bullied so hard. And the fallout of like everyone just dogpiling on Ishida for doing it, when it's like, it was everyone. Yes, he was the worst of them all, but it was everyone. And then he just sort of takes the brunt of all of that. It's a very social animal kind of thing to do. And then just sort of the way that his life kind of fell apart from there, leading to a near suicide attempt. But through meeting up again with Nishimiya, it does start off as sort of like a selfish kind of, it is both a very selfish thing to be like, to seek out the person you bullied and ask for forgiveness, but also it's just, you can also see that he is just trying to be like, I want to make sure that she's like okay now, in a way. And the hurdles that he has to jump through all the people protecting her from him, also very understandable, with the Yuzuru in particular just being like, oh, I know who this fucker is. No, you're not gonna get to talk to her right now. Fuck off. and I really did appreciate, like, there's just the entire cast for this is just so fucking good. Extremely realistic depictions of children and teenagers being put in these strained social situations of their own making, but also sort of rampaging out of control and letting their own individual personality neuroses and quirks sort of drive everything downwards into oblivion and just watch it, everything just kind of crashing and burning eventually. Ishida included, because Ishida is just sort of hasn't grown up as much as he probably thinks he did. Or maybe he didn't think he grew up at all, and maybe it's just like he thinks he just deserves to be this miserable little wretch. Um, and then we have Nishimiya in the corner over there just being like, this is all my fault, even though it very clearly is not. And I could very much see a lot of bad faith interpretations of this film as a result of that. Because it's like, Nishimiya is just blaming herself for everything constantly throughout the entire film and just constantly apologizing to everyone, and then she is part of the let's make things right kind of movement at the end of the film. And so I could see a lot of people doing some bad faith arguments of like, oh, she's caving to her abuser or whatever, and it's like, no, that's really not what it is at all. It's just sort of like hey, I tried to be friends with you in the past, and I can see that you are actually making like an effort to be friends with me now. And also, I'm just filled with such crippling self-doubt and hatred from being from being treated like shit for my disability for pretty seems like a pretty substantial portion of her life. And there's not really a point at which the whole show at which the whole story stops down and does a little like heart to heart of like, no, you were never at fault for any of this. I don't really think it needs to, because like, I don't want to say it's obvious, but like, that's not. It would be very weird for all of these really messy teenagers to just sit down and have a little powwow of like, you deserve to live. You are a very good person. It's not your fault that the world treats you that way, because that's not the group of teenagers that's surrounded her. It's a lot of teenagers who can get very petty at the flip of a switch. Which might be one of the reasons why I put off watching this film for a long time, because I don't like school teenage melodramas. I tend to avoid those not because I dislike them, but because they tend to be very stressful and tense and full of negative emotions. And sometimes I just don't want to see that. But this movie really perfects that to a certain extent. It is extremely good at just the intricacies of the teenage social ecosystem and how the what could be like offhanded comments can snowball into disasters. And so I don't think those kind of people would be the people to sit down and be like, this isn't any of Nishimiya, this is not your fault, any of this. So I don't think I think it would have felt a little bit out of the place a little bit out of place for the film to just sit down and do that. Instead, it takes on the mantle of like, we're just gonna welcome her back into what we're doing here. We're just gonna we're going to make this right through actions, not through words. Although also by words, because eventually Ishida comes to the realization of like, oh, I never actually said that I am sorry to Nishimiya. And so that meeting of him leaving the hospital to find her, what that one scene was just incredibly sweet and moving. I did not actually cry during this film. I was expecting to, but it never really got to me in the specific ways that make me cry, I guess. I could definitely see this being a tearjerker for a lot of people, but I still felt a lot of emotions, that's for sure. Actually, I felt like tearing up a little bit when it was like all over, actually, because I kind of just wanted more. Despite the fact that this is over 2 hours long, I wanted like more. The pacing was so dang good for the most part. Very beefy first act with the childhood arc of it all. So that's probably the, I'm not going to say the hardest part to get through, but the most tense part of the film, because it's just a bunch of kids being fucking brats. And I also like the adults are kind of messy in this as well. They're not mean or cruel, but they are either very stubborn or very extreme in their actions. And also it does seem very realistic in a way for like the teacher to just ignore the bullying constantly throughout this entire first film, and then once Nishimiya drops out of school and her parents complain about that, that's when he's like, oh, it was him. I know it was you. I knew it. I knew it all along. But it's like, but you didn't do anything about it, you piece of shit. So a lot of bullying, a lot of suicidal ideation in this film as well. So if that's something that could set you off, this is a film that's definitely going to touch on it a lot. Like, we have at least one, there's several characters that think about killing themselves. At least one tries to kill herself with Nishimiya, just, which is why I was gonna say the firework, the festival scene felt like very off and tense and weird for some reason, and like the lead up to it felt very weird, and I was like, why does it feel this way? And it was sort of just this lead up to Nishimiya's suicide attempt, which had me on the edge of my fucking seat, because I actually did not know what happens in this film at all, aside from the stuff I read in the manga. I mentioned that I read the manga. I got about halfway through the manga, I think, and the middle section really slowed down for me, and I was just like, this isn't really hitting for me. And I think it was around the time that the film got announced, so I'm like, well, the film will probably cut out a bunch of the stuff that I don't particularly enjoy. And it did, I think, as far as I know. Because I think there was a little bit more stuff with Yuzuru and why she wasn't going to school. But I think adding, without really tying it in neatly to the core of the film, I think that could have made this film a little bit more bloated and not as streamlined. So I'm okay with that getting cut. I think there was some Ueno stuff that got cut as well, but I'm kind of fine with Ueno just being a bitch. Like, she just is. Like, I wouldn't want to hang out with her, but Ishida wants to make right by everyone, it seems. And so, seeing him do that and seeing him, like, sort of come to the moments where he realizes, like, he's actually having fun and, just being able to live life were so very cool to see. I don't think I mentioned it all. Did I mention it at any point? Like, the way that after Ishida gets... Yeah, I did blame him. Yeah, I did talk about that. Sorry, I've been talking for so long about this. I'm just sort of rambling at this point. I should probably wrap it up. Not without talking about Kensuke Ushio, because I got to talk about Kensuke Ushio doing incredible soundtrack work. Very, very Kensuke Ushio score. Although I will say this is the most uplifting score that I've heard from him in a while. Like, there's a lot of inspirationalness behind some of it, as opposed to a lot of stuff in, like, Colors Within. That's the English title for the one. Like, Colors Within and Cocoon, and I guess Chainsaw Man as well, where it's just a lot more mood setting, and it's just very low key. Not with Chainsaw Man, but this one, it's a lot more string and orchestral stuff. Not a lot more, but notably more, compared to some of his other soundtracks. Yeah, I really, really liked this film. I loved all the characters. I've already forgotten the chubby guy's name. Nakatsugu, I think, or Yakatsugu. I love him. He's just this... I love how much personality he has. He is, like, also someone who very obviously is, like, getting bullied or, like, looked down on for being fat. And he just sort of rolls with it when he's in a more comfortable situation and just being, like, this big personality kind of guy. I really liked that. And, of course, the bond between Ishida and Nishimiya is the rockiness with which they eventually come back together throughout this film was so endearing and enrapturing to see. I don't think you really needed me to ramble this long about A Silent Voice, because you've probably seen it already. But if for some reason you haven't, I kind of spoiled a lot of it. You should go watch this film. It's definitely going to be pretty high up on the list for this year. So let's go see where I put it right now. This movie was really damn good. Alright. A Silent Voice is finally complete after all this time. We're going to go way up here. And yeah, we're going to put you in the number 7 spot for the year with a light 9. I was wondering whether I should put it above Haikyuu seasons 2 and 3 or not, but it's been so long that I'm not sure, so I'm just gonna settle on it being right there. Kyo Annie gonna Kyo Annie, Yamada gonna Yamada. That was really damn good. Okay. How many we got left? 4 anime left, 2 TV series and 2 movies. We got up next Macross Delta. I think the only reason I didn't watch this when it was airing was because, well, probably because I didn't know anything about Macross at the time, and I didn't know if this was like a sequel or anything. But also, I don't think anybody picked it up for streaming. I think it's like only on Hulu now. because fucking Harmony Gold and their shitty fucking whatever the English localization of that was, where they combined the Macross and like two other anime into one show. But anyway, Macross Delta. I know about the September meme. That's all I know about this one in particular. So let's dive in and see if I missed anything good. Whew! I feel the power of anime. Just finished up Macross Delta. Fun time. Not without its faults, but fun time. Now, if you already understand the statement, I feel the power of anime, I feel like I've sold you on this show. Because there's not a good way to elaborate on that without either just going into a bunch of amorphous, mushy terms, like about moe or hype, or just a bunch of conglomerations of stuff like that, or to just go on a fucking just read a textbook on it. Because it's kind of like you kind of have to feel it. Like, you see something fucking rad as hell, and you go, that's anime. That rules. You see a fucking dude using a giant mech that transforms into a jet that also has legs, breakdancing and shooting people, while a bunch of pop idols are singing a song that cures people of a virus or something that's causing madness. That's the power of anime, baby. It's so fucking fun. This show is incredibly fun and incredibly tropey. This is very much steeped in a rich history of overly earnest sci-fi anime. Very similar to Space Battleship Yamato in a way. Now, full disclosure, this is my first Macross series. So, I assume a lot of the other ones are like this to a certain degree, but I don't know where exactly this falls in the range of Macross stuff. I just have to assume that the general vibe is like this. It's much less serious than Gundam. It's much more, I hate to use this word, but it's schmarmy. But I like that it's schmarmy. Like, it's a very earnest, sappy, sci-fi melodrama romance with pop idols. If that sounds like your game, go for it, man. Because it is that to a T. There's not a whole lot of variation to the general sci-fi formula aside from the music stuff. The music stuff is basically the MacGuffin to make this more than a generic sci-fi story, and it works really well. I think they explain it just enough for you to accept the science fantasy, because this isn't really sci-fi, this is science fantasy, because there's no possible way for any of this to exist in reality. But we'll call it sci-fi for simplicity's sake. In any case, they explain just enough for you to accept the sci-fi bullshit for how all this is happening, but don't like go on and on about it until the very end when it starts to get a little fool. But they explain enough to make you accept that a bunch of J-pop idols can save the world through song, and that's really the message of this overall, is being able to understand those. How do I phrase this in a way that's not a completely infantile? It is a way to connect with people across culture, across borders, etc., through the power of shared enjoyment in music or anything like that. Uh, and it doesn't really hammer on that point like uh, explicitly, but that it's pretty obvious that that's one of the things that they're going for. We got space. I called them space Nazis in a Twitter post, but they're more like space Imperial Japan, because like originally I was gonna say like space Nazis without the racism, but then I was like, or I should space Nazis without the anti-Semitism, I should say, and then I was like, well, that's just kind of Imperial Japan, ain't it? Yeah. So basically that, but they're coded German. The Windermere's are very German coded, or at least Nordic coded, I guess would be a better one, especially with the name systems and stuff. Uh, and then you have like I enjoyed the world building in this a little bit more than I was expecting. Um, it's incredibly basic, but it's just kind of fun to see. Like Ragna in particular, or I like as a planet, just this like a seafaring people, and a lot of emphasis on like jellyfish and metaphors surrounding jellyfish, which was pretty nice. Also, there were mercats, so basically just cats, but with they look like seals, sort of. Um, good sci-fi animals. The good sci-fi animals. um, really enjoyed just the general vibe of it. There were definitely some moments where I just started tuning out a little bit because it was like it would hit like the mandatory moments of like you have to hit this plot beat here. So I was like, okay, I know this already, and they're not doing anything particularly interesting with it. So I'm just gonna. So I get where this is going. And there were some parts where I was a little disappointed that it went. That I kind of wanted it to lean a little more into like the more complex, I guess, because like eventually it's revealed that our main character Hayate, it's revealed that his dad essentially dropped a nuke on a city in Windermere, and that's why Windermere hates what is essentially the UN of this world. And it's revealed like yes, he dropped the nuke, but he was trying to get it away from the capital of the city, and he was trying to get it as far out as possible so that it wouldn't actually hurt anybody when they dropped it. But then like a remote control thing activated and it dropped anyway on some other random village. So like, yeah, that falls in line exactly with what you would expect from this kind of show. But on the other hand, I was like, I kind of wish his dad was just complicit in the genocide to a degree. I kind of wish like we had a little bit more complexity that Hayate would have to work through regarding his relationship with his deceased father. But aside from that, Hayate is a fun character, very by the book, tropey, cool kid who doesn't play by the rules but joins the military and becomes a pilot because he wants to fly how he wants. It's so incredibly tropey, but fun. He's a very fun, light-hearted character. There's nothing about him that's very abrasive or anything, so it's easy to just get lost in his antics. And it certainly helps that they pair him up with this very cute pop idol girl, Freya, who, honestly, one of my favorite character designs that I've seen in a hot minute. Absolutely adore her character design. She's just this bubbly, bright, and energetic ball of sunshine. they literally compare her to the sun at one point. I'm like, yeah, that's what you're going for. And seeing her work through essentially ditching her homeland to join this idol group and help spread peace and love throughout the galaxy, and her journey towards understanding why she sings and why she wants to spread her voice to the galaxy, and coming into this mindset of like, I want to spread as much positivity and happiness to the world, to the galaxy, as I possibly can, to avoid as much war and conflict as I can. And I am able to do that through the power of song, so I should do that. Other characters, pretty solid on the whole as well. Two of the other girls in the pop idol group, very obviously dating each other, but they didn't really say it outright because they gotta sell the figures. But very, very clearly roommates. Very clearly roommate vibes to them. What was it? Reina and Makina? I forget what her name was. Makima? Something like that. And then, yeah, all the pop idol girls were fun. Mikumo being essentially just this kind of a bitch, but in a way that she's like, come on, you need to like fucking get better at this. But in a sort of almost, it's interesting. And then the other girl who is just there, she's got a good backstory, but not nearly as standout personality-wise as the other ones. A little torn on the voice acting, because sometimes it's like really solid and just really hits really well. Like I forget what, I think it's Minori Suzuki voices Freya, I think. Really solid performance there. But then you have like some just completely like mid performances. Like Koki Uchiyama plays this guy named Messer in it, and this was right at the time that he was also voicing Shigaraki for the first time in My Hero, and those performances are night and fucking day. Yeah, he did not bring his best to Macross Delta, unfortunately. Such is life. Songs were really solid though. A lot of them just kind of blend together, but the general vibe's really good. The songwriting is really good. The OP in particular, which they play in the show several times, really hits. And you know what? It's a pretty solid looking show as well. I really like the design for the style for the character designs. I really like the line work, how a lot of it's not super crisp and clean. There's a little messiness to the line work that makes them feel a little bit more human, a little bit more earnest in a way, and it allows them to bend a lot more without just completely melting, I guess. Because it's not the most spectacular looking show, but I think the flexibility of the character designs and the general brightness of the color palette worked really well to make this a solid looking show. And then there's the CG. There's a lot of really bad CG in this. It's just not... I'll say it's framed well, and it moves well, but the textures are so very obvious. I will say though, not counting the CG, not a lot of compositing issues in this show. At least not until like the last few episodes. Like generally everything looks pretty well put together and cohesive, which I'm kind of shocked by. Just unfortunate that there's so much really weak CG. On the other hand, it did give us a giant robot with aircraft carriers for arms punching a hole in a castle. That was rad as hell. Uh, oh, and also they were doing that in order to stop the third impact, because they basically this show ends with the third impact from Evangelion, but with on a galactic scale, very out of nowhere, but I think it works well considering how it works well thematically. Does not work well plot wise because it comes very out of nowhere. A lot of in the second half, a lot of the sci-fi stuff really is just not all that interesting, but it's still fun. I for yeah, this was a dang fun show. You're not gonna get a lot of great plot work out of it. It's a very standard. It's a bog standard 26 episode space opera plot. If you saw the remake of Space Battleship Yamato, it's a lot like that to a certain degree. You're not going to get a lot of originality in terms of the plot, but in terms of the aesthetics and in terms of just the weird ideas that they throw at you, it's very fun. And I enjoyed the slow burn romance between Hayate and Freya. It's just a very, very nice slow build up to a solid romantic confession to stop the third impact. Which, again, thematically very strong, makes sense. It's not something that needs to be explained, really. I guess it's just like the power of individual love for each other allows them to stop themselves from being melded into a single galactic mind. Yeah, I liked this show. I'm not insanely hyped to try out the rest of Macross, but I am definitely interested now. I'm definitely interested in seeing what the other entries have in store, because there's not a lot of them. There's Macross Plus, 7. I think there's a 0, Frontier, and I think there's one more. I don't remember. Anyway, I'll try those out at some point, but for now, this was good. Alright, Macross Delta is complete. And we're going to go up, and we're going to put you in the number 41 spot, right above Bungo Stray Dogs, with a strong 6. Generic? Yes. Messy? Yes. Fun? Abso-fucking-lutely. Would recommend it for people who have very similar tastes to me. Alright. Last one for the summer 2016 season, One Piece Film Gold. I was not a One Piece fan when this came out. In fact, I didn't really become a One Piece fan until like 2020, so like 4 years after this. I think this is one of the ones that people really like. I saw the Mal scores like slightly higher than Film Red, but also Film Red was like very divisive. I fucking love Film Red. I don't think this is like Film Red at all from what I've heard of it. But I like One Piece. Let's give it a shot. I'm gonna be honest. I got 77 minutes into this movie out of the 2 hours that it is of its total runtime, and I have barely felt anything the entire time I've been watching it. I don't particularly care for anything, really, other than the, like, you can make some, like, vague hand gestures towards, like, gold means nothing if it can't get you the things that you want, like, with the gold prison stuff. Good idea there. And, like, the power of everyone's effort, power of teamwork, power of friendship, all that. But I'm bored. I've been so bored the entire time I've watched this. With the exception, I guess, of the opening fight scene, which was fun. That's so weird. I would have rather watched a movie about, or like a short arc about the long, long pirates than I would watch this movie, because their powers, or not their powers, but their gimmick, for as fucking stupid as it was, at least had, I don't know, it felt fun for a little bit, and the action was pretty okay. None of the action in this that I've seen so far has really been like, wow, that's really cool, that's some movie quality animation. I guess for One Piece, comparatively at this time, it was, because this was right after Dressrosa wrapped up. This was as they were rolling into the Zoe arc, and which was a little bit before Whole Cake, and so this was. Now, I haven't seen the One Piece anime, but I've listened to One Piece fans talk a lot, and from what I remember, Dressrosa, and around this point, was a real low point in terms of animation quality. Like, people really did not like how One Piece looked at this time. And based on the character designs in this, I can see that. This is the most flanderized that I've seen One Piece character designs in animation. Like, Nami and Robin literally look like hourglasses at some points. And just tits popping out everywhere, like, comically, to a comic degree. One of Luffy's most boring designs. The suit does nothing for me. I like the color palette for this movie. The gold works really well. Surprisingly, I'm not getting tired of looking at gold. And like the opening musical sequence was pretty solid, despite some heavy CG use. But the CG was like pretty like off in the distance, so it didn't detract from it that much. But I'm just so bored. I'm not interested by anything that's happening. The first fucking like half hours was so immensely predictable and not fun. Because I've also never been a huge fan of One Piece's comedy. It's always been super hit and miss for me, because they just so egregiously explain the joke explicitly all the time, and it's just so in your face. So that can really go either way, and most of the comedy in this is not hitting for me. I like Yuki Hayashi's soundtrack. Apparently Yuki Hayashi did the soundtrack for this. It's got like a nice jazzy big band kind of feel to it. Well, not really jazzy, it's just mostly big band stuff. But like, I like the extravagance of that. But like, I'm almost a Pokemon movie. I am a Pokemon movie's length into this film. And we've gotten one tiny bit of backstory about the main villain, Tesoro? I've already forgotten how to say his name. DeRosso? Whatever. Like, we saw a brief flash of a woman from his past, probably. Can't say for sure. Because Luffy called his gold worthless. But other than that, I don't care about this guy. I don't think he's a fun villain. I think he's a placeholder villain. He's a guy. He's a casino guy. He controls this casino island, and he's like evil. That's it. He's a placeholder villain. I don't find him interesting at all. I find barely anything about this interesting. It's just boring. Alright, well, One Piece Film Gold, unfortunately, is coming off the list. And that does it for the summer of 2016. We're down to 2 more shows from the fall season. Well, not shows. One's a TV series, one's a movie. The first one, Monster Strike. This one's based on a video game. I think it's like 50-something episodes. Yeah, this was back when I didn't give video game anime a shot at all. Have not heard anybody talk about this ever. But, fuck it, let's give it a shot. Yeah, that's really fucking bad. So boring. Not well drawn. I don't like the color palette. And apparently, they're only 8-minute episodes, apparently. But I still only managed to get like 3.5 minutes into the first episode because it's so not well written. This is about like a mobile game, right? Or something? Like, that's what Monster Strike is? And there's been no hints of that at all in the first half of this episode. It's just bland, generic setup for a bland, generic dude. It sucks. Okay, Monster Strike off the list. Last one. In This Corner of the World. I believe this is a World War II movie. A very long movie as well, because it seems like most of the versions that are available are the director's cut as opposed to the theatrical cut. I think the theatrical cut was only like 2 hours and 10 minutes, or like 2 hours, and the director's cut is like almost 3 hours. So hopefully it's as good as I've heard that it is, because we're gonna be in for the long haul with this one. Let's dive in. All right, that was a lot of film. A whole lot of film. I just finished up In This Corner and other corners of the world. The director's cut, specifically, clocking in at 168 minutes. 2 hours and 48 minutes, which I did not realize makes it the longest animated film. Or, I guess, longest animated film to be shown theatrically, I guess. You have to qualify it, because I'm sure there's some weird art house film that's longer. But, tied with some Chinese production from a few years ago now. But, I'd like to say you don't feel the length of it, but this is a marathon watch. You really feel that you are in it for the long haul. It really is not. Not only is it a long film, it is a deliberately slow film for a good chunk of its runtime. For at least the first half. Like, it's not until the second half of the film, when the war is starting to end, that it like becomes a little quicker paced. I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I'm just saying be aware of that when you go into this film. It's not a page, well, can't call it a page turner because it's a movie. You're going to feel the weight of it, which I think is part of the intention. You are really in this to soak in all of the tiny little things that make up the life of our main character, Suzu, a girl from Hiroshima who marries into a family. I had to look it up on the map, in Kure, which is just southeast of Hiroshima. Close enough to, well, I don't know if this was a little bit of creative liberty, but close enough to where you could see the flash from the bomb going off. Like, that was definitely like a thing that was hanging over me the entire film, because I knew it was a World War II film. And as soon as they said Hiroshima fairly early on in the film, I'm like, oh, this is going to be bad. But most of the film, well, I'm not going to say most of the film isn't about the war, because the war is the backdrop for the majority of the film. It shapes a lot of our characters' lives, but it is more so about the lives of the characters. I was about to say something really stupid and obvious. It's about the lives of the characters living through the war. Like, no shit. I was about to say something. I was not going to let myself get away with saying something as pretentious as that. But it's still true, I guess. It's not a war film. This is definitely in the vein of the, like, it's probably the happiest version of this kind of film, I guess. I hesitate to say happy because it's, like, not. But, like, when you stack it up against, like, Barefoot Gen and Grave of the Fireflies, and even The Wind Rises, to a certain extent, it's certainly more light-hearted than a lot of those, even though some really traumatic shit happens in this film. Several main characters die as a result of the bombings and the atomic bomb and just all the things happening during this war. Handled surprisingly tactfully on the whole, with the exception of one really gruesome moment near the end of the film. It's very tactful about, in terms of, like, gore and bodily harm and stuff like that. There's not a whole lot of that, with the exception of, like, one moment near the very end of the film when Suzu and Shusaku, her husband, end up adopting this kid who lost her mother. Even though a lot of gruesome stuff does happen in the film, like Suzu loses her arm at one point, it's still tactfully handled, which I think fits the tone of it pretty well. But also, I guess, having seen the other big Hiroshima films and World War II films, I guess, I do have to stack this up against them in terms of being a tragedy about World War II. I'm not sure how much water that holds. In terms of being a immersive, living through the tail end of a war kind of film, solid. But also, what am I trying to say? Toothless is far too harsh a word for what I'm trying to say here. It is not as pointed in its messaging about the suffering that we go through during war. And maybe that's intentional. Maybe this is not meant to be a war is traumatic and horrendous and the worst thing ever kind of story. And it's much more centered around, like, just the perseverance through war, through tragedy, through devastation, and how we kind of still, and how, like, people still have to, like, live their lives during war. Oh, I completely forgot about Cocoon as well. Cocoon is definitely up there. Definitely in this realm of film, I guess. Which I think Cocoon might be my favorite of the bunch out of all of these. Well, actually, I forgot The Wind Rises. The Wind Rises is by far my favorite out of all of these, but that's not real. That one's much more of a well, I'll rank my favorite World War II anime films later. That might actually be a fun list. We'll sit on that. But I think the grand thesis for this film, if I had to pin something to it, is that people still have to go about their lives, even when tragedy is happening, even when people are dying, even when the horrors of the atom bomb grace the earth with its satanic presence. People still have to get up and go get food. People still have to get up and go to work. People still have to get up and do the laundry and cook dinner and keep up with their family and make sure that everyone is doing okay in their lives and that you're doing okay and that you have to do things to make yourself okay. I guess that's the big thing that I took away from this film, which is a solid message to convey in the when a lot of your, I guess, a lot of similar films are much more about the horror and the devastation. While it doesn't shy away from those elements, it also is like we still have to trudge on. Like the world does not stop. It keeps going. And like even during like the very gradual ramp up to the most direct horrors of the war, it's still very solid in that messaging of like we still have to live through war, and war on top of the general tragedies of human life just sort of amplifies that and really puts the screws to our relationships with other people. I guess the biggest one being the relationship between Suzu and her sister-in-law Keiko. I think that's the sister-in-law's name. Who reminds me a bit of the ant character from Godzilla -1. If you remember, I think that's the one. You know the character I'm talking about. Well, I guess speaking of the characters, really enjoyed everyone in this film. This is a very incredibly realistic cast. This is like just there's hardly anything fantastical or anime about it, aside from some of the like comedic moments and sort of the comedic framing and sort of the way some of the character acting works. This is I was about to say another stupid thing. This is a very film. But this mostly does not have a lot of anime-isms to it. The voice, the acting is not hyper-exaggerated. It's very straightforward and subtle, but still has like enough dynamism to it to grab your attention. There's not a lot of tropiness going on. It's mostly just regular people living their lives. I really liked the romance between Suzu and Shusaku, this sort of arranged marriage kind of thing. that gradually grows into like a very real relationship that has very real problems in it. The subplot of him having a past where he tried to save a prostitute from her brothel, and Suzu eventually making friends with that prostitute, Rin, and just the very complicated web of relationships there, along with the childhood friend, Tetsu, who she was in love with, or just wanted her, just someone that she would have preferred to marry or something. Just the very complicated web of relationships there was very engaging to see, and how a lot of very imperfect people just sort of try to work themselves through that. It was very good. Well acted for the most part. I will say though, in the early scenes, when it's scenes of like Suzu as a child, her voice actress sounds much older than a child. Like, her voice doesn't really start to fit her until she's like 18 or 19, which is the bulk of the film. But like up until that point, the voice really doesn't fit. But I think that's really my only acting quibble. Everything else is really solid, and aside from how it sounds, how it looks is also really solid. This is a very large-scale MAPPA project from way back when. Again, not very anime in appearance. I think this could very easily be mistaken for a Ghibli film by someone who is less aware of anime, in terms of just the general vibe, the aesthetics of it, especially like a non-Miyazaki one, because like the character designs are very not anime, if that makes any sense. Well, they're not. It's not that they're not anime, but they're very subtle. The features are much more subdued compared to like a general anime aesthetic. If there is a general anime aesthetic, I guess. A stereotypical anime aesthetic, let's call it that. There's not a lot of this is definitely not a minimalist kind of film. There is a lot of very subtle movement going on, a lot of great character acting, animation, a little bit of abstractness every now and then to hone in on some of the more poignant emotional moments. The death of Harumi in particular, these abstract spark animations creating different shapes against a black screen were very potent. I really like the color design for this. Very mellow, very soft. Yeah, it just looks really good. There's not a lot of there's not going to be a lot of like big moments. Like, aside, some of the weather scenes have a lot of really solid cuts to them, but aside from that, it's just a very well shot, solid production. Definitely movie quality all around. There was only like one shot. It was like a wide shot where I looked at it like, that could have been better. There was only like one shot that was like that. Yeah. I think that's all I have to say on this one. Would definitely recommend it. I don't think it's my favorite of the World War II films. I think it's definitely beat out by Wind Rises by a long shot, and I would still say Cocoon beats this out, but I think it's still very much worth seeing, both for the working through tragedy stuff and just the general daily life stuff, NXT, how these characters experience the human condition. This was a really solid way to end my wrap up of 2016. All right. In this corner of the world is complete. Now, I will say, on a technicality, the version of In This Corner of the World that I watched did not air in 2016. What I watched was In This Corner and Other Corners of the World, which was the extended cut, which added like 38 minutes to the runtime, and that aired in 2019. That came out 3 years after the original theatrical cut. So, in my mind, I cannot put it on the 2016 list, unfortunately. So we're going to go over to the 2019 list. If you want to take a brief look at that from what I have here, 36 shows, 36 anime that I finished this year. And we're going to put you in the number 18 slot. Hold on, let me change this title to be correct to what I actually watched. And you're getting a light 8. Definitely feel the length, especially in the beginning, but really solid film. Alright, we're going to close, and we're going to go back to this list, and with that, we are now officially caught up on 2016. So, how many, I think, let me count again how many I added since we started doing this. We got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So we added 9 shows, or 9 anime. I keep saying shows instead of anime. We added 9 anime to the 2016 rankings since we started, bringing our grand total up to 62 entries. Highest one being A Silent Voice, in the number 7 spot with a light 9. A lot of favorites from this year. 8 favorites now. That's pretty solid. And you know what? I'm going to cut this recording real quick and do my usual math to add up everything. So I will be back right now. Alright, so for winter season, 20 entries completed. That's by far the most, with an average of 6.8. Not too bad, but not close to the top. Spring, 17 finished with an average of 6.41. Lowest average of the bunch. A lot of 5s from the spring season. A lot of 5s and some 4s. And a lot of 6s, too. Spring was pretty lacking. And not any favorites from the spring season either. Also, the winter season had the only 10 from the list with that season of Gintama. And then summer, 15 entries with a 7.07 average. Summer is just kind of spread out all over the place. And fall, with only 10 entries finished for an average of 7.4. Not a lot finished, but a lot of really high scoring stuff. A lot of 8s. A lot of 8s from the fall season. I guess that's when I started becoming a little bit more discerning in what I finished, because there's nothing below a 6 from the fall season. No 5s or 4s. And in any case, that gives us a overall average of 6.85 from the 62 shows that I finished. So, yeah. 2016 is now in the bag. And just as a preview for the next time we do this, we got 2017 up here. We got 43 entries finished and still 25 to get to, depending on how many prequels to certain entries I get through. But that's not going to happen until next year. So until then, my name is Ember, and I'll see you next time.